All right, and of course I have now a panel of gentlemen who will help us analyze and dissect the issues surrounding the U.S. elections as we head into the 11th hour, the moment Americans and the rest of the world has been waiting for, to know who will be the 45th president of the United States to succeed President Barack Obama, who has been in office since 2008. And now joining me in the studio is Tom Maliti, who is an analyst. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning.
Morning.
You're well?
I'm good.
We also have Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who is a renowned author. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
You're well? And
Fine.
finally, all right. And finally, we have Professor Noah Midamba, who is a professor of defense and foreign policy at the KCA University. Good morning, Professor.
Morning.
You're also
Sir.
okay. All right. Thank you very much for coming in. It's an exciting morning. We have been following closely the last-minute campaigns of the U.S. elections. And I will start by asking you what we're just asking our viewers. Who do you think will win the presidency?
If the voters make a cold, rational decision, then Hillary Clinton will win. But Donald Trump has tapped into an anxiety, an insecurity among individuals, among Americans who used to work in factories that have now closed, who used to have industrial jobs that are now no longer there or have gone to other countries. And this will be also an emotional judgment that people will be making as to who do they feel, not necessarily based on facts and figures and policies, but who do they feel best to serve their interest.
Professor?
Well, I agree with that. I think it's likely that, or it looks like Hillary is going to win. But I don't know what I'm expressing. My own
Yes, your
desire,
yeah.
rather than, but it looks, with everything that is going on, it looks as if she has a shot for the presidency. Yeah.
Professor Mdama, who do you think is likely to win the U.S. presidency?
Okay, sir, before I answer that question, let me divert just a little bit to say Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o is a guest of KCA University. He will be speaking on Friday, and he will get the highest award for the first time, the first institution in Kenya to ever do that. He has received significant award elsewhere, including South Korea, and he was, of course, a Nobel contestant, and we have not given him an award. So we are very grateful to have this great thinker and great writer of the 20th century.
Definitely. I'm also honored to have him on my set
you.
this morning. I am amidst great minds, by the way.
Thank you.
But before we get into our
now
discussion.
let me answer the question.
All right, quickly.
I predict that Hillary is going to win colleges by landslide. I predict about 3,000 college votes. The general election is going to be close, about 4 to 5 separating, but eventually Hillary is going to pull it off.
All right, before we get into the discussion, let's also take a look at the kind of reactions we have in the Pearl of Africa, which is Uganda, just our neighbors here. And joining us from Kampala, Uganda, is our reporter Solomon Serwanja. Let's just see what exactly are some of the expectations the Ugandan people have on the U.S. elections. A very good morning to you, Solomon. Thank you very much for joining us. What is the mood there with regard to, of course, the 2016 U.S. elections?
Well, a very good morning to you, Akisa. Back home here in Uganda, it's a bit cold, but rather the mood is upbeat as the Ugandans wait for the results of the U.S. 2016 elections. Hillary Clinton taking on Donald Trump. We are counting down, and perhaps in a few days or so, we'll be able to know who will be the president. And of course, Ugandans have been discussing U.S. politics now. The U.S. is a very significant country in Uganda, but its relationship in Uganda has been one of a bitter sweet taste. Diplomatically, it looks like everything is going on, but from what the president often speaks about, it speaks loud of how the Uganda is relating with the U.S. But speaking about relationship, the U.S. has invested in different sectors, much more in the health sector. The USAID actually is one of the big funders of different health programs here in Uganda. Hundreds of billions of dollars have been invested here in Uganda, much more in immunization, in circumcision, in HIV, among others. The U.S. has also stamped its feet down in enhancing the UPDF presence in different foreign missions. For example, in the hunt down of Joseph Kony in the Central African Republic. It has also been seen supporting the UPDF in terms of training of its soldiers, especially those who go in Somalia. And so, yes, the influence and the politics of the U.S. still matters to Ugandans much more, even as we are going to see the elections coming through in just in a few hours. We'll know who will be the president here in Uganda. But let's look at the two candidates vis-a-vis the discussion here in Uganda. Hillary Clinton comes off as a Democrat here, but also she was a Secretary of State in President Obama's first administration. Well, during her tenure, we saw a lot of money coming through in the health sector. But we also know, Akisa, that the Democrats are very, very, critical to issues of human rights and governance. Now, you know very well that they have also been advocating for issues of equal sexual rights, especially for the gay people. President Obama leaves behind a legacy of defending the gay community in the U.S., and that has been trickling down here in Uganda, especially recently when we had a big debate here in Uganda regarding gay rights and vis-a-vis our culture and cultural norms and values. And so we expect that Hillary Clinton, if she wins, as the professor was predicting, by the way, we're likely to see that issues of good governance and democracy and also human rights will be pushed further so much. We're most likely to see the US's foreign policy, especially in Uganda here. We will see them pushing so much on issues of human rights and good governance, perhaps coming in there to dissolve the grievances between key opposition leader Dr. Kizza Besigye and the president Yoweri Museveni, even as the politics of Uganda continue on. Now, if Donald Trump, for example, if we go past the, the discussion of the professor who is in studio, past his prediction, if Donald Trump takes the day, we're most likely to see, of course, Donald Trump has been widely criticized as someone who is anti-black or who is racist in nature. Well, again, if we go back to the discussion, a lot of the discussions that are taking place in the U.S. regarding the race and the Black Lives Matter here also are being discussed back home. What will happen to the number of Ugandans who will be asking for visas to go to the United States to perhaps seek job opportunities or even to go and make the U.S. their homes? Well, I don't know what will be next, Akisa.
All right, Solomon, thank you very much. Of course, we will be coming back to you later to just understand what exactly Ugandans would want, or who exactly Ugandans would want to be the next president of the U.S. That is our reporter, Solomon Serwanjo, joining us from Kampala, Uganda, just giving us a perspective, a Ugandan perspective, of some of the things they expect in this particular election. And back to my panel, of course, we are taking a look at an array of issues that surround the U.S. elections. And there's so many things that people would ask with regard to Africa. What would either win mean for Africans?
I think by and large, the U.S.-Africa relationship will remain more or less the same. There are things that are now taken for granted. So, for instance, the Africa Growth Opportunity Act that opens up some opportunities of trade for African countries in the U.S. For example, the Presidential Emergency AIDS Program, PEPFAR as it's known, which is a U.S. government funding directly HIV prevention programs on the continent. That will remain because that has now gotten bipartisan support.
Yeah.
Both acts have gotten bipartisan support. And then in terms of support for things like peacekeeping missions, and of course, the main U.S. concern on the continent is the possibility of members of terror groups that are based in Africa conducting attacks in the U.S. and that's their main foreign policy focus. And therefore, they're working with governments to prevent that possibility and also to reduce the terror threat on the continent.
All right, Professor Ngugi, looking at Clinton, she has been working for 20 years. We could easily say that she's a member of the system. She has been a senator. She has been the state secretary, so to speak, and she's Secretary of State. And now she has been a first lady. Now she's heading into being a president if Americans would decide that. But what would we have differently in terms of the relationship between Kenya and the U.S. if Donald Trump won?
Well, first of all, he has tried to criminalize Kenya by claiming that for Obama to have been born, to have been connected somewhere with Kenya is some kind of crime. So Trump and others like him have put Kenya squarely at the center of American politics through there, because you're the leader of the Ba'ath movement. Yeah. So I would suspect that his presidency can only strain African-American relations. Although I agree that the fundamentals may not always change, because as we know, nations have no permanent friends, but they have permanent interests. I think Hillary might be more sympathetic to the goals, of Obama and so on. But even she, in terms of foreign relations, there is a mistake which she and Obama made in the invasion of Libya, right? And we cannot lose sight of that. Otherwise, some of the major goals will probably be sustained. The only thing I'm concerned with myself, actually, is for Africa. Africa must also take into account its permanent interests, And when you look to America, and there are many things we can learn from America and Europe, we should also think seriously that Africa is the biggest continent in the world, has more, the whole of America, the whole of Europe, China and India can fit into Africa. So by definition, Africa has the most resources, okay? So Africa has a lot to give also. So that when you look at our relationship to America or to Europe, no matter who is the president, we must look at it from a position of our own strength and protection, quite frankly, of our own resources, and not always look at the America and Europe as the eternal donor to Africa. Look at the other way around. You look at the history of Africa. Africa has been the eternal donor to the West, including America.
All right, I'm getting to you in a bit. I just want us to listen to some of the speeches that were made earlier in the day, as of course both sides are trying to get the last votes on the last minute to clinch the seat, and of course to get into the much coveted House, which is minute campaigns. And as you've just seen, she got Bill Clinton, the husband, to also just get into the campaign, speak to the people, see if they will be able to change some minds or help some people make up their minds and get into the ballot. And of course, with my panel here, we're still discussing the U.S. elections and some of the outcomes that we expect and what this would really mean for Africans and the relationship between the U.S. and Africa and the U.S. and other parts of the country. And you were just about to say something about what this would really mean, either presidency, if Donald Trump wins or if Hillary Clinton wins. What exactly would this mean for Africans?
Let me say this, case I was Barack Obama co-chair in Cleveland, Ohio, when he first ran for president. In fact, I wrote an article which appeared on this magazine, and that was sent to every household in Cleveland, Ohio. And also was involved with almost taking Obama anti-Saituni, that the Republican Party have written a manuscript for, and was about to sign that manuscript for $400,000. And we went from Cleveland to Boston and took her back to Ohio and kept her on my basement until the election was over. So let me say this, and in the context of implication for Kenya and Africa, Obama was not expected to become president of the United States. People thought it was by a fluke or something was seriously wrong. And I tested that because I went door-to-door campaign, and the first lady that we met with my 5-year-old son, they were very gracious. They were in their 80s. They voted all years as a Republican. And my son rang the doorbell, Walter, and the lady came out and asked my great-grandson, what can I do for you? And Walter said, can you vote for my friend? And who is your friend? Barack Obama, of course. And the lady kneeled and hugged my son and said, for the first time in my life, my sister Ann and I are going to vote Democrat because of you young people. And because we just read this wonderful comparison between McCain and Obama. And that was my article that they just read.
So what would this mean for African countries?
Now, just a second. The next person came at the door and we were carrying these pamphlets. And he looked at me and said, go and tell your friend, this is America. He will not become president. So within that context, Obama then became president. And Obama's first focus was on the domestic politics, dealing with black issues, dealing with Hispanic issues, and really proving to be the first president of America. Now, before Obama was George W. Bush, who had done a lot actually for Africa. He stopped 5 wars that were fighting. He implemented significant programs. When Obama came in the office, Obama had broader themes for how to solve African problem, African issues, but basically follow George Bush's programs, with the exception one, Power Africa. And this just happened recently in his second term. And then there are other areas which he focused on, which is good governor, eliminating corruption, eliminating tribal strife and all that kind of thing, and opening Africa for business. These are very important things. President Clinton, as I expect, is not only going to follow what Obama left, but is going to be much more substantive with the issues of Africa, because it is now very glaring from African-American standpoint and from African standpoint that Africa has alternative. They can go to China, they can go other place. So America has to be involved. I do not expect Donald Trump to be the next president, the 45th president of the United States. But if he does, it will be a disaster, not only for Africa, but for the world. And in a way that we have never seen, because this is a man who's talking about having nuclear Japan and nuclear South Africa, and actually using them when it's appropriate.
All right.
You know, so this is the most dangerous man America has ever come close to American power.
What I'm trying to make really is, I mean, I agree with what his observations. In fact, my wife and my kid actually worked for Obama's campaign. I don't have a vote in America personally, but my wife has, and my daughter, and they worked for Obama. And there's no doubt in my mind, even the very fact of his being the first black president of a country where black people were never expected to be in that kind of leadership. That in itself, to get a psychological block broken, I think is a big achievement. But my point still is that no matter who is the president, and I agree again that of course it does matter whether it's Clinton or Trump who is in power, or Bush or somebody else who is in power, but in the end, it's Africa, you know, because the disasters, the crimes that the West as a whole historically has perpetrated in Africa in order to control the resources of Africa is really enormous. See? And it's how Africa, we as African people, is how we look at our resources, how we look at our continent, how we secure our base as an African continent, that will make us have sort of such a relation with America or Europe or any other country, you know, that in the end benefit the continent.
All right.
But if we work from where we don't secure our base as a continent, we shall always be in a negotiating from a position of weakness, no matter who is in who is the president.
All right, we've seen President Obama campaign so hard for Hillary Clinton, but is this an assurance that Hillary Clinton will continue with the legacy that Obama had started, some of the visions he had? Look at the health, the care systems, the education, and some of the policies that Obama had. Is it the much that he has campaigned for Hillary, is it an assurance that Hillary will continue with the work that he had started?
Hillary has said that she will. She has said that there are things that she may reform or change. For instance, the healthcare plan that Obama led, which is called the Affordable Care Act, or the Obamacare.
Obamacare, yeah.
There are gaps that have been identified that need to be addressed. She said she'll address it, and other things as well. So on the domestic front, she's likely to continue a lot of the policies that Obama has initiated, but she will also emphasize her own agenda. Hillary Clinton has been in public life in the US for 30 years, but that public life has not been in government. It has been both in the non-governmental sector and in the government sector. And one of the things that she's consistently been working on are women's issues and children's issues. In fact, her first job was with the Children's Defense Fund. So she's likely to give emphasis to that in ways that will only become apparent if she gets into the White House. She may lay out a plan right now, but until you get into government, you never quite know how things will work out. So on the domestic front, that would be consistent. In foreign relations, we'll have to wait and see, because there are things that Obama has said, that has talked about. He made big speeches, one in Cairo, one in Accra, and the emphasis was on good governance, fighting corruption, and things like that. But under his presidency, democratic space on the continent has reduced, and the US has not been as strong an advocate as the speeches he made in Cairo and Accra indicated the US would be. So for instance, when people took to the streets in Egypt and demanded the end of military rule, the US eventually backed the military government against the wishes of the Egyptian people. So there's been some inconsistency as far as that is concerned.
Because again, adding to that, you see, no matter, and that is not a judgment, no matter who is the president of America and whether they are right, they will always look at the world through the best interest of the America, and so they should. So that's why I keep on saying the challenge then becomes ourselves. You know, can we also do the same thing for the continent? Look at the continent and our relation to the world, you know, from the point of view of the best interests for Africa. But I always get the impression that we are more ready in Africa to kind of bow to the judgment and other things of the West than we are prepared to say, this is what our stand, we protect our own resources, we manufacture our own cars, we do innovations like they're trying to do in this university and other things. We stand on our 2 feet. And on the basis of that, we can actually have very good relationship with other countries, because then we have a lot to learn from other countries, but they also would then have a lot to learn from us as well. Yeah.
Case, I want to support that, that very point, in that Africa must have a clear agenda, and a clear agenda emanating from each of the countries in terms of where we're going and how we are going to get there, without thinking for somebody to come in and bail us. Right now, we turn to China, but China is going to cost us very dearly when you look at the interest rate that we are going to be paying for the rest of our life.
All right.
So the point is, in the second term of Barack Obama, he was very clear what he wanted to do in Africa. But because of Africans' confusion, African political system, African corruption, African misgovernment, he just could not. He could not get his way. And you can hear the frustration when he talk here in Nairobi, and particularly when he talk in Addis Ababa. You know, when some of the presidents want stay for life, and you know, they're no longer adding any value at all in the country.
All right.
And so those are the kind of things that Clinton, in fact, I'm quoting Clinton from Nairobi. He said, the president love you. Make use of that. That was a direct quote, you know, because Kenya was saying, oh, we can do without you. You know, we are going to China, we're doing this kind of thing. America is the only superpower left in the world.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm afraid in respect of time, we will have to wind up. This is Tom Maliti. He is an analyst when it comes to world affairs. We have Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, a renowned author, and Professor Noami Damba, who is a lecturer of defense and foreign policy. And we're just taking a look at the U.S. elections, but in the African perspective. What exactly does this mean for those in the African continent? Should it matter to us who the next president of the U.S. is? And if so, what will it mean to us if either Hillary Clinton wins or Donald Trump? And of course, these are the conversations we will be continuing with as we continue with our special coverage on the U.S. elections today and tomorrow here on KTN News. And we also sought to engage with you on Twitter. We asked you, who do you think will win the U.S. elections? And 72% of you say Hillary Clinton, 28% of you say Donald Trump. And I'll just sample some of the views. Titus Rotich says, Hillary Clinton has world political experience to be U.S. CEO, unlike the real estate mogul. Thank you very much. Mwangi Wagadhuta says, I feel it's Hillary Clinton. Numbers do not lie. We also have one here, Odhiambo Philip, who says, it is obvious the next U.S. president is Donald Trump, 100%. And he seems so sure about it. Miguel Mogoshia says, Hillary Clinton will win the U.S. elections in 2016. And finally, Clive Mushoki says, I want to give Donald Trump my blessings as the Americans cast their vote. Remember, we continue keeping you up to date with the goings on in the U.S., even as they continue with the final lap of casting their ballots on the next U.S. On the 2016 presidential race. And of course, remember, the winner needs 270 of the electoral votes out of the 538 to clinch the seat and the much coveted White House. Here we continue to keep you up to speed on that. Thank you very much for being with us since 6 a.m. to now. My name is Akisa Ondera. Up next, Betty Kiao comes in, and of course, she continues with the coverage of U.S. elections. Do enjoy the rest of your day and keep it KTN News.